My name is Ben Miller. I'm here today with Professor Matthias Koller, who is somewhere. There he is. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how studying butterflies can actually help us treat the medical condition of venous ulcers. So I'll start with this photograph on the left here, which I took about a year ago. And what's cool about this butterfly is that the bright blue color you see on the wings isn't caused by pigments or dyes, but instead by nanoscale structures like the ones you can see on the top right here. So these structures cause light to interfere with itself, selectively reflecting some colors and not others. The physics behind it is similar to that of the colors on the surface of a soap bubble. For the past few years, my research has been focused on developing synthetic versions of materials just like this, but with one important twist, that they're also elastic. What this means, as you can see in a sample of our material here, is that basically as you stretch or compress this material, these embedded elastic nanostructures in turn deform, which predictably and reversibly results in a change in color. For reference, this sample here is roughly 6 by 8 inches and takes only a couple of minutes to make. So in parallel to this, I'd like to talk about venous ulcers. I apologize for the slightly graphic illustration here. But this is basically a chronic wound often found on the lower leg. And it's caused by the inability of the blood vessels in the leg to correctly return blood up to the rest of the body. This condition affects between 1 to 3% of people, and with an aging population, that number is only going to increase. It can also take up to a year to treat, causing significant pain and discomfort. Now, speaking of treatment, the best way to do it right now is actually pretty simple. It's compression therapy. You tightly wrap a bandage around the leg, which mechanically assists the blood vessels to move blood around. Now, the amount of pressure you actually apply during this is really important. So the takeaway from this graph on the left here is basically that if you apply the correct amount of pressure, you can cut the treatment time by months, saving significant discomfort. However, even experienced medical professionals will apply the pressure incorrectly up to 30% of the time. So what we need is a method by which anyone, medical professionals or people at home, can apply the correct pressure every time. So this is where our material comes in. What we've done is just integrate it into an existing off-the-shelf compression bandage, and this provides a visual indication of the pressure. Essentially, if it's red, that means it's not tight enough. If it's blue, that means it's too tight. And if it's green, that means it's just right. So this, again, will help anyone be able to apply a compression bandage correctly. So at this point, there are, I think, two important questions to ask. One, does this actually work? And two, could this potentially be profitable? And I will talk about a couple of points on the second question first. So with help from Deshpande, we've already developed a roll-to-roll manufacturing process for this material. The material itself that comes out is reliable and robust. So we scientifically stretched it 10,000 times, and I very unscientifically put it in the washing machine at home. And in both cases, there's no obvious difference in optical or mechanical properties. Enough material to create a 3-meter-long bandage costs roughly $2. So in comparison, if I went to CVS and bought the current best-in-class compression bandage just off the shelf, that would cost me around $30. So for just this additional $2 cost, we can create a product that is potentially significantly better performing. And just to put that into context, the compression therapy market is expected to reach roughly $2 billion over the next few years. So now to go back and answer the first question, which is, does this actually work? A paper out of our lab a few years ago essentially tested this. So we took a group of people and we asked them to apply a bandage with a specific amount of pressure, which is indicated by the dotted line in these graphs here. They tried 3 different types of bandage. The top 2 are essentially the cheap off-the-shelf one and the high-end off-the-shelf one. And in both cases, you can see that the amount of pressure applied is not always accurate, either undershoots or overshoots. In comparison, on the bottom there, with an earlier prototype of this technology, it was a different mechanism, but essentially the principle was the same. Color corresponds to pressure. We can see that people were far more effective in applying the right amount. So what are the next steps that we need to do? Well, most importantly is clinical testing. So we essentially need to reproduce the data you saw in that previous plot, but with actual medical professionals and patients in a clinical context, eventually to demonstrate that using this bandage provides a direct reduction in treatment time. We also need to continue the work we've been doing on customer discovery. We've spoken to roughly 20 people so far, a combination of physicians, patients, etc. And yeah, we need to keep talking to them to make sure that the product is right and to understand what the right business model would be. I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the rest of the team. So Professor Matthias Koller, who runs the Laboratory for Bioinspired Photonic Engineering, LBPE, in the MIT Department of Mechanical Engineering, as well as Max, who is another grad student in the group. Lost the N on his name there, that's fine. Also, I'd like to thank the Deshpande Center for all their advice and support, particularly Paul and Ryan, our mentors, and Brigham and Women's. So I will be next door at the poster for the rest of the day. Please do stop by, but particularly would appreciate any advice on moving forward with the clinical testing aspect of this, any advice you might have on what the business model could be. We're still at a pretty early stage on that side of things. And most excitingly, any other applications you could think about. I'm always fishing for new ideas for what we can do with this material. Already had some great ideas today. But yeah, look forward to talking to you. Thank you very much.